What does the end of the world look like? In Horizon Forbidden West, our protagonist, Aloy, is fresh off the defeat of a dangerously rampant AI, which planned to cause the extinction of all life via an army of lethal machines. Alas, in the months after its defeat, a choking, invasive plant species, poisonous to plants and animals that are not adapted to it, begins spreading unchecked across the world, and now, Aloy races to find the only technology that can stop it. This is the inciting incident of Forbidden West, but in order to understand it fully, first we need to talk about 1,000 years before the events of the Horizon games, an arrogant industrialist billionaire creates the invention that will end the world. The Pharaoh Plague, a swarm of war machines which consume biomass and self-replicate infinitely. After a long and grueling war, they successfully end all life on Earth. The extinction of the human race and our environment, thus, comes at the hands of unethical use of technology at the cost of the environment. The machines are designed specifically to consume the living world to replicate themselves, to exhaust the planet's resources for selfish profit. To resist the machine plague, Project Zero Dawn is formed, a group of scientists and technologists who create a terraforming system which disables the machine swarm and begins to rebuild Earth's biosphere. Their technology is designed to create life, to nurture and sustain it, to give of itself rather than take. It takes the form of a self-aware AI called Gaia, which is programmed to restore life on Earth in sustainable balance with nature. And unlike the faceless swarm of consuming machines, she is designed to be like a person. Her programming resolves into a motherly, caring, and compassionate personality. The Horizon series is in large part about these two visions of technology: selfish, destructive, life-consuming war machines versus nurturing, harmonious, and life-creating caretaker machines. One technology to end the world, and the other to save it. As Horizon Forbidden West opens, the terraforming system is broken and needs repair. It is causing imbalances in the environment, and in that imbalance, the Blight, a rapacious, invasive plant, finds fertile ground to grow and spread, threatening to consume life everywhere on Earth. The Blight is a ticking clock under the narrative. If balance is not restored, resources will dwindle, flora and fauna will perish, and the inhabitants of the Earth will soon starve. End of the world. But besides that, it's also a powerful metaphorical and visual linchpin for the narrative. It represents the deteriorating health of the environment, but it also stands in for the overarching conflict and narrative of essentially the whole series so far. It is not the antagonist, but it represents antagonism. It represents the metaphorical shape of evil in the Horizon universe. So, how can you possibly make a plant encompass all of that? Well, we are introduced to the Blight immediately in Horizon Forbidden West. In the intro cinematic, Aloy rides desperately through the landscape, passing by blighted fields and watching the dying of poisoned animals from its toxins, as machines struggle in vain to balance it out of the ecosystem. In her dreams, the Blight is an almost demonic force, ensnaring and strangling her and rotting away the memories of the closest thing she's ever had to a mother. This is reinforced in the game's opening chapter, which is an incredibly lush and beautiful jungle environment, within which patches and eruptions of the Blight are draining the wild diversity of color and life right out of nature, replacing it with withered uniformity. Here, the Blight looks almost like a wound in the land. Its hypersaturated blood-red seethes with erosion, and the trees and plants on which it creeps are reduced to desiccated branches. In this ocean of greens, the color alone identifies it as an interloper, something that doesn't belong there. It is foreign to this environment and is colonizing it, homogenizing it, turning everything that is here into itself. This Blight infection that you come upon right by the water's edge is especially striking to me. You can see how the Blight erupts out of the earth, and not only does it coil its way up the trunk of this tree, choking it by the roots, you can even see sprouts of the Blight emerging from inside the tree's own branches. It has gotten into the core of the wood and eaten it alive from the inside. All along the trunk, its stems are poking through the hollow bark, sprouting bulbous pods and long strings of leaves. It's a frightening sight from a human perspective, but as you'll learn on your journey, for all that it looks weird and hostile, it isn't itself evil, but a symptom of it. The AI terraforming system that is trying to rebuild the Earth has been brought out of balance, and in that imbalance, the Blight has found the perfect environment to spread. The opening chapter is also where you encounter an interesting visual consonance. Another symptom of the climate's collapse is these violent supercell storms that form in the skies, swirling like evil eyes up above and spewing lightning. Interestingly, they too are red, almost the same hue as the Blight, and I can't help but wonder if that's an intentional similarity, a color coding to imply a connection that these might be problems from the same source. You'll encounter the Blight continuously on your journey, all across the biomes of the game, and in each environment it makes itself an outsider in interesting ways. In the desert environments, which are sparse and defined by earth tones and bulky rock formations, the Blight stands out with its shining saturated red and slender geometric shapes. Here, it contrasts with the native flora, especially the cacti and the stout trees, which are the only things that can compete with it on height. But they are bulkier and more stout. They are built to protect themselves against the arid environment. They are built to retain moisture and live through droughts. The Blight, meanwhile, grows fast and wild and slings its flowers upwards on frail stalks, sprouting leaves in every which direction. It is the wrong way for a desert plant to grow. It's essentially unsustainable, and that is pretty good storytelling about the nature of the plant. In the heavy, deciduous forests further to the west, among the towering redwoods and ferns in the underbrush, the vines of the Blight almost fit in. They almost seem like a natural, albeit weirdly colored, part of the environment, some creeping vine that preys on sick trees. But its sprouts reveal the truth. They are spreading along the ground, eating away the natural moss and exposing the rock underneath like coral, like the bones of the earth laid bare. Where the rest of the forest is identified by and swelling with a lush undergrowth, the Blight simply wipes the ground clean and moves on, like the waves of a wildfire. In the fields outside the farming community of Plainsong, the farmers battle back the Blight with the help of plowhorn machines grinding it out of the soil, while it sweeps over the crops and chokes them out and replaces them, taking over almost in the same structure as the fields they're consuming. But it is in the thorn marsh in the southwest that it seems most at home. Here, in the swampy ground surrounded by weeping trees and mangrove roots, the Blight is consuming vast swaths of the ground, and where in other places it strips the ground bare and leaves nothing behind, here it has vast fields of apparently healthy growth for itself, and curiously, while it's definitely eating some of the undergrowth, it seems reluctant to attack the bigger trees here, or even move into their protective shade. Perhaps this, or something like it, is the Blight's natural environment, where it has natural competitors and predators. It's hard to say, but it is interesting to find an environment this much later into the game, where its presence is seemingly, at least, less destructive than elsewhere. For my money, the most impactful encounter with the Blight comes a little ways into the early game. You enter the Forbidden West through the gates of the fortress city of Barren Light, whose walls mark the border with the Forbidden West itself. Coming down the road, if you look to the north, you'll see this field. It's a field of dead machines, the killer machines of the Pharaoh Plague, and even they are overrun with the Blight. But there's an interesting consonance here, a similarity. The leaves on the creeping vines of the Blight are arranged in pairs pointing forward, giving them a sort of segmented look, almost like the tentacles of the machines that they are now twirling around. And it doesn't end there. The twisting, swaying curvature of the dead machine's tentacles are almost identical in shape to the twisting, swaying stems of the Blight's flowers, and those flowers open up in petals in a way that is strikingly similar, almost identical, to the grasping claws at the end of the machine arms. And I don't think this is just a coincidence, because these things are not just visually similar, they're thematically similar as well. The Pharaoh Plague was a deadly threat to Earth's environment because the machines consumed organic matter and used it to make more of themselves. The Blight is a threat to Earth's environment because it consumes organic matter and uses it to make more of itself. The Blight and the machines, thus, are not two separate threats. They are, in essence, the same threat, just expressed in different guises. The main direct antagonists of Forbidden West are the Far Zenith, a group of ageless immortal human space colonists who have returned to Earth to steal its most precious resources so they can build a world in their own image. And consuming the resources of the living world in order to make a new world in their own image is exactly what the machines of the Pharaoh Plague were doing, and it's exactly what the Blight will do if it's left unchecked. In the Horizon universe, this is, thematically speaking, the shape of evil, imbalance, disharmony, and ego, an unwillingness to let those who are different from you be part of the world. The shape of good in Horizon is also consistent. Just as the environment needs a broad diversity of plants, animals, insects, fungus, and organisms, so too does a healthy world need a broad diversity of people, cultures, opinions, viewpoints, and modes of being. The game makes a big point out of this, taking you on a walking tour from the religious monarchism of the Karja to the tribally organized warrior culture of the Tenakth to the rural naturalism of the Utaru, and beyond. And our protagonist herself is not immune to this concept either. When the game begins, Aloy is fresh off winning a great victory against a rogue AI, and to win that war she has united a large group of tribes and people and many allies, but after the victory she just leaves without a word to any of them. Throughout the early hours of Forbidden West, you re-encounter old friends over and over again, all of whom express some understandable sadness, and sometimes anger, that Aloy not only left without saying goodbye, she left without even asking for their help. And Aloy, for her part, is constantly dismissive of those offers. She keeps pushing people away. Thematically, she's refusing to let them be a part of her world. And it makes sense. Aloy was an outcast. She was alienated and despised by everyone in her community through no fault of her own, and the only way she has ever known to gain acceptance is through extraordinary action, whether by being victorious in the proving of the Nora tribe or by quite literally saving the world. She wants very badly to prove her worth, and while this personality trait has empowered her with great bravery and extraordinary compassion, it is clear that she also has trouble accepting that she has succeeded, that people do see her as worthy, that they want her to be a part of their worlds, and they want to be a part of hers. And there's a painful psychological realism to that. It is hard to heal from the kind of trauma that Aloy has been through, and much like how Forbidden West is about healing the environment, I think it's also about the healing of Aloy. Just as the threat of the Blight is undone by harmony and diversity in nature, so too are Hades and the Zenith defeated by a harmony and diversity among people. And in that same way, the thing that begins to heal Aloy is the harmony and diversity of friends and allies that she brings together around her. Horizon Forbidden West is a game that puts a lot of care and attention into its environment design. The contrast between lush nature and withering blight tells the story not only of the surface threat of the game, but it illuminates some of the deeper ideas at play in the narrative. The Blight is the ghost of the same evil that wiped out the world 1,000 years ago, and its nature presages the evil of the Far Zenith that is coming to ensure the world's destruction once again. The imbalance the Blight represents is thematically connected to the imbalance that our protagonist is struggling with, and the undoing of the antagonists happens by the same means that heal both the world and Aloy. Of course, this is all just my interpretation. I read quite a lot into this gross red plant, but part of the beauty of art, especially video games, is that just as the same painting can conjure different emotions in different viewers, each playthrough of a game, each experience of a story can lead a person to very different experiences. So my advice, my personal recommendation, is when you play a game like this, slow down once in a while. Pop into the photo mode, zoom in on some things, pay attention to what looks similar and what looks out of place, because there's almost always more story being told for you to discover than it seems like on the surface.